This is Gemara Zevachim Daf Ches, the Daf for Erev Rosh Hashanah, the final day of Elul. We like all the learning to be an incredible schos aliyas neshama for a mother of one of our wonderful Daf longtime members. The schos ha'taira should be a credible aliyas neshama of Aster Reyzel Basar Meir. Psiyat d'shemaya as we enter into a new year. Should be an incredible year. Zevachim taiva, misiyata d'shemaya. The koyach ha'tayra should elevate as the Reyzel Basar Meir and be a militzation for the entire mishpacha. We're holding two lines from the bottom on Zayin and Beis. The Gemara now continues the discussion of Lishma. Continues the discussion of L'Shem Mitzvah, L'Shem Bailim, and says the Gemara, Chatos Minalan. Chatos and Pesach were the two exceptions in the Mishnah. Chatos and Pesach were the two cases that the Mishnah said are puzzling ganzen. Says the Gemara, where do we know such a halacha? Explains the Gemara, Dechsev Shachat Oisah Lichatos. He slaughters it as a chatos. From there we learn out Shchita L'Shem Chatos, that the Shchita should be the Shem Chatos. Says the Gemara, the Avi is kasha that by now we can anticipate Ashkechan Shchita. Kabbalah Minal, and how do we know the Kabbalah? How do we know the next step, receiving the blood? Explains the Gemara, Dechsev, as we turn over to Chesem and Aleph, quotes the Gemara of Lokach HaKoyin Midam HaChatos, and the Koyin takes from the blood of the Chatos, and from there we learn out, he takes it, if he's taking it with intention, take Kabbalah. L'shem chatas. Says the Gemara, Vashchan Shchita v'Kabbalah. What's next? Zrika, the sprinkling minal, and of course we skipped over the halacha that we're going to get to. Tamar Cross says the pasuk v'chibar levakayin mechatasai, and he gets a kapara from his chatas, and we darshish a kapara l'shem chatas. The kapara, which is the avodas adam, which is the zrika, should be l'shem chatas. Continues the Gemara, and again we did skip over the halacha. Continues the Gemara. Continues the Gemara and Rashi over here. Let's point out. Rashi points out. Excuse me. Where's the Rashi? Kasha mitzvah be'ekesha d'zayis ater mishlamim asi kishar kol zebachim. Ein achanai maskana me'hasam yavla likamei me'karu de'hadri dechtevei kula begufei. That it's all learned. No, that's the wrong Rashi. I apologize. Let's go back for a moment. The top line, Rashi says, "V'kiber ha'ilacha layitzrich kara." Why not? The fourth avodah. Tibechlal Kabbalah he misrabai lakes. It's learned from the Kabbalah, as you learn back on Daf Dalet. Says the Gemara, 4 lines down. Ashchan Shinui Kodesh. From here we learned out Shinui Kodesh, Shinui Bailim Minalan. Where do we know that the same is true about doing it for the wrong owner? Amar Kra, says the Torah, Allah le'achaveiroi ashichan le'mitzvah. Says Gemara, okay, now we know that that's the right way to do it. But la'akev minolan, where do we know that if you don't do it, it's ma'akev? Kilam Rav Huna Brei Yeshua chatas chatasai. As Rav Huna Brei told Brei Yeshua said from the drasha of chatas to chatasai, chanami chatas in chatasai. Continues the Gemara the next step. Ashchan mitzvah b'shinoi kodesh, uzrika b'shinoi bailim, bein lemitzvah bein la'akev, la'akev achol avodas b'shinoi kodesh, u'b'shar avodas b'shinoi bailim, bein lemitzvah bein la'akev minalan. So continues the Gemara that if we're doing the math, there's shinoi kodesh, there's shinoi bailim. There's the mitzvah, and then there's the yikuva. Then there's shchita, zrika, ilach, and kabbalah. So the permutations are high, but basically there's 4 avodas. Let's take out halacha, because Rashi taught us we don't need that one as we learned it prior. So there's 3 avodas. There's shinei kodesh, the shem chatas, the right carbon. Then there's shinei bailim for the right owner. Then there's lemitzvah, the fact that you should do that. Then there's la'akev, the fact that if you don't do that, it does not work. So where do we know that final step? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yoina, Asya mechatas nazir, dechsev ikra v'koyin levnei Hashem, v'asas chatas soy v'asoy l'soy. From there we learn out, sheikol asiyosav l'shem chatas, all the asiyos all the performances of the carbon should be l'shem chatos. Ashchan shinei kodesh. Shinei ba'ilem minala. Amar Avuna Brei Divi Yeshua. Chatos. We learned it out from that drasha. But the obvious kasha, Masler Ravina, Miata Oilas Sai, my darshas. No, excuse me, not the obvious kasha, but says the Gemara, if the whole drasha is from the extra vav Oilas Sai and Chatasai, so says the Gemara, we should learn the same drasha by Oila. Ravina, and according to Ravina, minchasai nesach nisachai my darshas. But he says the Gemara, if we're able to learn out just an extra vav in a pasuk, so what do we do by all other psukim? So answers the Gemara, ho mi bayilel minchasav niskayem balayla. Excuse me, you can't see the Gemara, here it is. That the mincha and the nesachim are able to be brought even at night. That the mincha and nechasam can be brought even the next day. So it is indeed a riboy, but a different riboy. So now circles the Gemara around. Okay, what do we do with extra by Oila? Visu, and further on me Gamri Me'adadi says the Gemara, can we learn out a chatos from a Nazir's chatos? Chatos, Chela Mechatos Nazir. Like Gamra, we cannot learn one from the next. Why not? Shkein Yesh Ima Dam Macherim. Because a chatos Nazir has other dam that's brought together with it. So says the Gemara, how could the Mekar from our chatos be a chatos Nazir? Chatos Nazir mechatos chaylev like Gemara. Why shekin karis? So says the Gemara, there are particulars that are different. So how can you learn one from the next? So says the Gemara, you are correct. Ella Amar Rava comes on Rava, and Rava says a different drasha. Asya mechatos mitzaira, a different chatos that we find in the Torah. Techsev, the Torah says v'sisa akayin as a chatos, and from there we learn out. And now we have to go through the same sequence of events. Again, let's remember. There's Shinei Kodesh, there's Shinei Bailim, there's the Mitzvah, and then there's the Ikuva. Says the Gemara Vashchan Shinei Kodesh, Shinei Bailim, Minole, Amar Krav, Chibar, Al Metaher, V'Gaimer, Al Metaher Zeh. V'Al Metaher Chavero, that teaches Shinei Bailim. V'Kati Miyavim Me'adadi asked the Gemara, really, can you learn out from the Chatas Mitzayra? Chatas Chelem, Chatas Mitzayra, Lo Yalfa, why not? So says the Gemara, we have a problem. We're trying to figure out the dina by a chatas. We tried chatas nazir, we tried chatas mitzayra, and each one has their own unique halachas. So the Gemara is stuck in a difficult place. So suggests the Gemara, you're right. You can't learn out a chatas from a stam chatas nazir or chatas mitzayra. Teisi Chadam Itarti suggests the Gemara, let's learn out one from two. Says the Gemara, okay, Behelo Lichtaf. So which one? The Torah says Chatas 3 times, the Chatas Nazir, the Chatas Meseira, and the Chatas Chelef. Which one of these 3 should not be written? Learn from the other 2. The problem is, Chatas Mitzayra, Chatas Nazir is extra dam. Chatas Nazir, don't write Chatas Nazir, learn that from Chatas Chelav. And Chatas Mitzayra, Malal Shein Alehem Sheila. Can't be undone, which a Nazir could. Chatas Mitzayra, with the Chatas Chelav and Chatas Nazir, Shein Ein Bain Bidalus. They're now brought. They are not brought with dalus. What does that mean? Rashi explains not that they're not brought with dalus, that they're not yardim ba'aniyah islavi oif. There's no special dispensation by the chatas nazir and the chatas chaylev if one is poor. So the Gemara is stuck. We have 3 mekayros, and how do we learn out one for the next? Ella Amar Kra says the Torah, Zoisa Torah la'ila lemincha. Hikshu akasiv lishlamim. Says the Torah, we compare chatas to shlamim. Ma shlamim bein shinei kodesh, bein shinei bailim, bein lishma, lemitzvah. Step 1 of chatas bein shinei kodesh, bein shinei bailim, bein lishma, lemitzvah. So we learn out straight from a shlamim. Helkach mitzvah mishlamim. We learn out the fact that there's a positive commandment that has to be Lishma. We learn out from Ishlamim, Vahanach Kroi, and the other psukim now, what do we do with them? They are left to teach us La'akev that if it's not done appropriately, then it is the kuva, and the chatas will be entirely possible. Says the Gemara, okay, in the last line, Vashkel chatas chaylev dichsiv lachatas. Okay, so you finally have a makar from a chatas chaylev. Why? Because the Torah says lachatas. We turn over to Chesem and Beis, but it says the Gemara there are other chatais. Chatas davodas chavim, which the Shmiya has called ubiti sivasayim and tumas mikdash. Kedasha of Deloy Kisivu Minalan. Says the Gemara, what do we do about other chatais? When the Mishnah said that Kol Zevachim, Zevachim Lishman are Kashir and Chutz, Mechatos and Pesach, it's all chatais. So says the Gemara, we have other chatais, which in that area does not have a special word lachatas. So says the Gemara, how do we know regarding them that if it's not done lishma, that it's going to be possible? Explains the Gemara, chatas davodas chavim, 4 lines down, chesem beis, asya mechatas chaylev. Why? Shchein karis kamaisa vanakulya asa b'matzad. So it's a 3-step process. Step number 1 is we have chatas chaylev that we learn now from Sukkim. Step number 2 is we have chatas davodas chavim, which is learned from chatas chaylev. Why? Because they're both karis. Step number 3 is all other chatais we learn out from a matzad, from the 2 of them. Continues the Gemara at the 2 dots. So that really takes care of the part of the Mishnah, the exception to the chatas. Continues the Gemara, Tanarabanan, Pesach bizmanoi, a Pesach that's brought in the right time, Lishmai kosher, Shaloi Lishmai, Pasul. A Pesach that's brought in the right time, if it's done Lishma, it's Pasul. If the Pesach done Shaloi Lishma, Lishma it's kosher, Shaloi Lishma is Pasul. V'shari Moisa Shana, Lishmai is Pasul. If you bring up Karban Pesach or any other day of the year, which of course is inappropriate, it can't have the status of a Pesach on a random Tuesday, then the halacha is, even if it's brought Lishma, for the sake of a Pesach, it's Pasul. Shalai Lishma, but a Karban Pesach brought on any other day of the year, which is Shalai Lishma, it's kosher, which we have to see what that means. What does it mean that a Pesach is brought on Shari Moisa Shana, Shalai Lishma? And Rashi says, hold on tight. The Gemara is going to explain this momentarily. So says the Gemara, Mina Hani Mili. How do we know this halacha that a Pesach Shalai Lishma b'Shari Moisa Shana is kosher? Ravu Dishmol Amar Kra, says the Torah of Imin Atzon Kabarna L'Zevach Shlamim L'Hashem. For there we darshin Davar Haba Min Atzon Yel L'Zevach Shlamim. So that comes from the sign is for a shlamim. Ema, says the Gemara, shlamim midi achrini lai. L'chayra, this is only telling us if it's a shlamim, meaning if you bring up Pesach, not on Erev Pesach, with intent for a shlamim, that is true. You're right, it'll be kosher. But says the Gemara, if it's brought for any other carbon, it should not. Amar, Rav Ilam, Rav Yechon, Zevach, l'Rabbi is called Zevach. Comes to include all karbanis that a Pesach is brought for any other karban. Bishari Moisa Shana is going to be kosher. Ask the Gemara, Ema kol tishachel lavi kamaisa. Ask the Gemara, should it become whatever it was shechted for? Should the karban Pesach was shechted for an Eilah l'mashal, should it become an Eilah? So ask the Gemara, why, if the Pesach is brought Shalei Lishma, does it become a Shlamim? It should be whatever the Kohen had in mind. Answers the Gemara, you're right. Hashlav the Zevach Shlamim. For there we learn out, that a Karban Pesach, if it's brought for anything aside from the Karban Pesach, is going to be a Shlamim. Ask the Gemara, wait, Ema l'Zevach Klal, Shlamim Prat. And therefore shlamim in midi achrini lo. It should only be if it's brought for the sake of a shlamim. Answers Gemara Lashem other uklal masler back in our pocket. And this should sound familiar. We had this a few days ago. The 2 klalim are not comparable. Klalikama is marbi zevachim v'sulai klali basra. Lashem called Lashem afilu ifasilu milachais, even if it's not for a shar zevachim. Answers the Gemara, Haitana Devei Yishmael b'chlali uprati darshi. It's like Tana Devei Rabbi Yishmael. Says the Gemara, Ki agavna klal b'prat klal yatadana klina prat. So what's the drasha? Ma'abrab mefurash shalei lishma v'kosher. Av kol shalei lishma is going to be kosher. But ask the Gemara 1 second. Ima Abraham mefurish davar abba ben eder ben adava. Av kol abba ben eder adava. Oilus ushlami meir chatas vashem like only oilus and shamim could be brought as an eder and adava. Ella, the Gemara says you're right. Lezevach is a ribayu. Ask the Gemara, circling back around, why don't we say whatever it was shechted for, that's what it will become, and nothing less. Amar Rav Avin explains Rav Avin on the next page. Let's just read another 2 lines. Doich and kachim the top of Testament Aleph. And echolim eitzel kachim and echolim. Vein dochem kachim and echolim eitzel kachim. Shein echolim. Let's stop over here. We'll pick up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.